Well, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the March 2023 Outdoor Ethics and Conservation Roundtable. We've got a great roundtable set up for tonight. We've got Craig Hensley from Texas Master Naturalist, who will be talking to us about interpretation and how we can use it to improve our programs. All right, so tonight we're going to follow our usual agenda here. We're going to start off with our safety moment. We're going to turn it over to Craig. Afterwards, we'll have Scott Anderson will talk to us about outdoor ethics and conservation frequently asked question. We'll have a few announcements, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So with that, if you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Scout oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. 2. Join me in the outdoor code. As an American, I will do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners, be careful with fire, be considerate in the outdoors, and be conservation minded. All right. Thanks, everybody. And now, Michelle, can you take us through our safety moment?
Yep. So the safety moment tonight, I chose hammock camping because it is getting to be that time of the year where people are starting to think about getting that out. I know everybody here in South Dakota is tired of snow and ready to be outside again. Camping in hammocks has gained in popularity over the past 10 years, and more camping equipment manufacturing are offering more hammock-style tents as a way of reducing the footprint on the camping area. It's helpful from a leave no trace standpoint. However, hammocks are not without risk. And so we want to take a quick peek at some of those. Scouts being scouts. Paul, if you can turn to the next one. Scouts being scouts, it's amazing how many of them think that stacking hammocks is a great idea, or having a hammock at 6 or 7, 8 feet off the ground is a good idea, because you should have to climb a tree to get into your bed at night. Inevitably, they fall out of it at some point and break their arm. This from experience. We had a scout break his wrist falling out of a hammock that they let get too high. So make sure that scouts, adults, are hanging hammocks in a secure location, such as to trees or solid posts, but not to something that can move, like a vehicle, bumpers, trailers, a dead tree, anything like that. Secure, fasten, and check all knots prior to getting in the hammock. It doesn't hurt to double check, just like when horseback riding, we double check the saddle, double check your hammock, because of course that's where you're going to be sleeping at night, and making sure your knots are going to stay nice and tight through the whole night. I know I've seen it happen where a scout doesn't check that knot, and by morning part of him is on the ground and the other part is still in the air. Hammocks should not be hung such that the lowest point is more than 3 feet above the ground. Severe injuries have resulted from elevated falls. If you've gone on a college campus, they like to see how high they can get their hammocks to go as well. And the reality is you can't get in, you can't get out safely. And inevitably there's a trip to the emergency room. If you're using a solid living tree, special care should be taken not to damage that outer bark. Some hammock tents have wide bands for securing them around living trees. I know at our camp, we will do a tree check if you want to do a hammock camp. And I will have you retie and use a wider band, or use the sticks around the tree method to protect the bark. I don't want any damage. I put in this picture because we are looking at a similar system to have hammock sites at our summer camps and our council camps, so that we can reduce the tree damage even further. Something like this works really well. You can see it's a plains area or a grasslands area. There are no trees to hang your hammock on. So that's another important factor to be looking for. If you're going to go hammock camping, make sure you have a place that you could secure it. Otherwise, your hammock is simply on the ground. And then, of course, never stack hammocks one above the other. That seems like a logical thing. But as leaders and older scouts, we need to make sure that scouts understand that hammocks are not a stackable moment. Okay. With that, that's our safety moment. Have fun, get out and do some camping.
So time for FAQs. And one of the questions that I'm continually being asked these days are, why did we drop Tread Lightly from scouting programs? Well, the truth is we did not drop Tread Lightly. Tread Lightly and its partners lead a national initiative to protect and enhance recreational access and opportunities by promoting outdoor ethics to heighten individuals' sense of good stewardship. They're a great nonprofit organization out there doing great work in promoting outdoor ethics. Next slide. So in 2010, the BSA signed a memorandum of support with Tread Lightly, specifically for the guidance with use of our motorized recreational activities. So this was just when we were branching out and bringing the ATV programs to many scout camps. We wanted to make sure we had some outdoor ethic guidance to support that, and we signed a memorandum with Tread Lightly. Next slide. So Tread Lightly remains a valued partner of the Boy Scouts of America, and I cannot emphasize that enough. So next slide. What is this all about? Well, back in 2021 or 2020, there was a requirement since 2010 to 2020 in the first class rank that said, explain each of the principles of Tread Lightly and tell how you practice them on a camp out. In 2019, Scouts BSA asked us if we would look at the advancement program and see if we wanted to make any changes to establish a better continuity. Next slide. So specifically, we were charged with examining the curriculum of outdoor ethics advancement programs of the Cub Scouts, of Scouts BSA, and Adventuring. Next slide. So we determined clearly that outdoor ethics is an important part through all program levels and on all of our outings. And it starts with the Lion Cubs' basic respect for animals and nature and builds through Cub Scouts, Scouts BSA, and Venturing to teach impact awareness, responsible practices, and skills in conservation and stewardship. To that end, then Scouts BSA announced that they approved some recommendations that we had made, and they made changes to all of the outdoor-related rank advancement requirements. They were reviewed, realigned, and then based on the guidance from our committee, these adjustments were made to help effectively build a Scouts outdoor ethic knowledge and align with the information that's found in the Scouts BSA handbook and in the field book. The requirement now builds in a logical way through the ranks with leave no trace in the outdoor code used as references throughout. Next slide. So we rewrote that first class requirement and we did remove Tread Lightly from the advancement program. We replaced that requirement with this new one that went into effect last August 1st of 2022. And it says, explain the potential impacts of camping, both on the environment and on other outdoor users, and explain why the outdoor code and leave no trace principles are important for protecting the outdoors. So it was that change of that first class requirement that led a lot of people to believe that we were just dropping Tread Lightly from Scouting's outdoor ethics program. Next slide. So our justification here, while Tread Lightly provides an alternative set of outdoor ethic principles, the leave no trace principles already provide clearer and more complete relevant guidance for Scouts through first class outdoor skills and ethics. And removing the requirement to learn Tread Lightly principles reduced some of the confusion that Scouts were experiencing as to what outdoor ethic guidance to follow whenever they were planning and executing their outdoor program. Next slide. So once again, tread lightly is very important to our scouting program for specific guidance on motorized activities not covered by Leave No Trace materials. Tread Lightly promotes outdoor ethics specific to motorized recreation, such as all-terrain vehicles and powered watercraft. They also provide a lot of guidance on backpacking and hiking, all of which is valuable information. But the all-terrain vehicle use and powered watercraft are advanced skills in our outdoor programs that are not universally provided to all Scouts. Next slide. So the Outdoor Ethics and Conservation Committee fully supports and recommends the practice of tread lightly principles whenever Scouts are participating in motorized recreational activities or in backcountry shooting sports, where Tread Lightly also provides some valuable guidance. Tread Lightly provides excellent outdoor ethics teaching resources and educational programs. So please don't hesitate to go to the Tread Lightly website and look at some of the wonderful resources that they can provide to you to help teach outdoor ethics to your Scouts in whichever program that they're involved in. Next slide. So to wrap it up, Tread Lightly remains a valuable partner of the Boy Scouts of America. We did not drop Tread Lightly from the scouting program. All we did was change some of the requirements in the Scouts BSA rank advancement. And lastly, I have a slide that asks for questions. Thank you all for all you do to support outdoor ethics and conservation and scouting. I'm going to hang on to the end of the roundtable, and if there are questions, we'll get to them then. So, Paul, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So anyway, Craig's computer decided it was going to have to restart. So he's going through getting his computer set up. So we'll just keep going with our announcements while we've given him some time to get back online. So Paula. Oh, hang on. Before I give it to you, Paula, I've got something I wanted to say. If you could, please, everybody, take a minute and let us know some topics you'd like to see covered in upcoming roundtables. Always looking for new topics, ideas, and if you've got an idea of who we might go to cover that topic, that's even better. But you don't have to have that. We'll take the ideas. So, looking forward to seeing your ideas. You can put them in the chat now. Send us an email at the roundtable email address. But please, we look forward to hearing from you. And also, we need your feedback because that's how we know whether what we're providing is meeting the mark. And it's another way for you to let us know what we can do to better support you, because that's why we're here. We're here to support you, not just to have ourselves talk. So with that, now yours, Paula.
No, this would go to Scott.
Okay.
Anything new, Scott, on the Outdoor Programs Conference?
No, the only thing I'll add here, so please save the date, the National Outdoor Conference at Philmont, September 27th through October 1st. It is a Wednesday evening through Saturday event. We are now accepting requests for proposals for presentations. So if you are deeply committed to a topic that you would like to present, would you please drop us a note? And Paula, can I send that via program ops at outdoorethics-bsa.org?
Yep, and, not a problem.
And we'll reach out to you and see if we can make that work. We're trying to provide a full slate of conservation topics and a full slate of outdoor ethic topics for this conference. There are 70 total slots to be filled. We're hoping that we'll take about 10 of them. So we are looking for some great presentations that we could present on the topics of outdoor ethics and conservation at the National Outdoor Conference. So thank you all. I hope you'll attend. I hope I'll see you there.
Okay, next slide, Paul. I think.
Who's on the phone?
I know. There we go. Now, this is just a list we always like to share where our master educator courses are going to be. Coming up is Bechtel Reserve, and that's going to be for staff and for regular scout leaders and people that are interested in master educator courses. Then we're going to go to Sioux Council, and that is in the great state of South Dakota, and Lewis and Clark Scout Reservation. And that's going to be a really fun one. The person who did the safety moment is responsible for that one. And she's awesome and has all kinds of wonderful things planned. National Council, Northern Tier, I believe Mark should be on here. And that's always a highlight of our summer. Put a canoe on your head and go from lake to lake. It's a lot of fun. And then we're going to Tennessee, and it'll be the first time in that area in a long time that Tennessee is going to have a master educator course. It's going to be 2 weekends. Please look into that if you are in that area, because this is your chance to go to a master educator course close to home. And then we finish off the year with Philmont Scout Reservation. So that's going to be a good one too. So if Paul, if you could click can you do that? Are they live for you? They were live for me. Click the,
yeah, they're live.
no, go over to the one on the right. Yeah, that one. So these slides are going to be on our website, and then I guess it didn't work. Oh, there it goes. So here you can see the whole thing, and it explains a lot of information. And it's just click on the slides that you bring up when you're either watching the video or the slide presentation that is there. And then we have scholarships. Not everybody is blessed enough to have a bunch of money to go to the master educator courses, and our very, very good friend Dan Howes, it was always his joy and pleasure to teach master educators courses to just about anybody that would listen. And so in his name, there has been a scholarship put together for people that just need a little help to get to the master educator courses that we are putting on. And Paul, can you bring him up so they can see him? He's at the very bottom. This is Dan at when he was doing a advisor course for one of our old conservation awards. And this was at Salt Lake, camp in Salt Lake. So if you have any money that you don't know what to do with, we can use it to add to the pile and send more people to master educator courses. And if not, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Paula. And now we have a coming soon. Matt, you have something to talk to us about.
Yes, I do. So, based on some of the feedback that we've received from you, there's a lot of interest in seeing different outdoor ethics activities be demonstrated and get ideas for those kind of things. So we're going to start a new segment in Roundtable similar to the safety moment, where I will take a minute or two to go through some activities and have an activity of the month. So if you have any ideas for different activities that you'd like to see, and it'll be very short, just 3 or 4 minutes or so, please put those in the chat. We'll also be updating our survey online, the typical survey that you take after each roundtable, to include a question that asks for ideas for what kind of activities you'd like to see. So we're looking forward to starting that next month with a new activity of the month every single month. And we're excited to hear your ideas.
Thank you, Matt. I'm looking forward to it for sure. So I have an update from Craig, and he had a power outage. And the power is back now. He's working to get his computer back up. So talk about Murphy's Law, but so I think we can.
Paul, I can answer a question that I saw in the chat if you'd
Why
like.
don't we do that? That'd be great.
Let me scroll to it so I don't get it wrong. So Dave Paulson asked for later, was Tread Lightly added to venturing or Sea Scout advancement? And
Okay,
I will
Greg,
tell
would
you
like
that in the
me to
venturing
share?
program, outdoor ethics only appears in the Ranger Award program. And at the moment, there is no requirement to learn Tread Lightly to earn that award. However, if you read the venturing requirement book, there is a whole chapter there on Tread Lightly. So it is included, the information is provided to venturing scouts that are seeking the Ranger Award. Sea Scouting at this point in time does not have any specific requirements with respect to Tread Lightly. However, we are working with them even as we speak to try to see how we can improve outdoor ethics in the Sea Scout advancement program.
Why don't we take this opportunity and let's jump forward
an open door for us, and
our
Tread
announcements. We'll
Lightly
do our announcements early
is the most
today.
significant player, providing some great resources in motorized boating, and also sailboating and watercraft in general. So I think there's a good chance that Tread Lightly, as it stands, may be a requirement that will be included in Sea Scout venturing. You run the slides, Sea Scout programs.
Yep, hang on a second here.
Now, that being said, the Outdoor Ethics Awareness Awards, whether it be Scouts BSA or for venturing, and Sea Scouts can earn the same by following the venturing requirements. All of them include a Tread Lightly component. So that's still a part of our Outdoor Ethics Awareness Awards. So that was the answer to the question.
Right.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Scott. And I see Craig back. Should we give it a shot, Craig? Craig was born in Iowa and he's worked from Minnesota to Texas. He's had a passion and love of the natural world since he can remember. He started his career path in biology, but turned to interpretation with his first graduation job in hometown. And he began to develop his interpretation skills, leading hikes in his favorite 10-acre nature preserve, even though at the time he had no idea what interpretation really was. For the next few years, he has honed his skills, building his understanding of what it means to deliver positive outdoor experiences to audiences of all ages, including scouts. He's a Texas master interpreter and soon to be recertified National Association for Interpretation certified interpretive trainer. So Craig continues to share his love of the natural world with audiences across Texas, and he has agreed to share it with us today. And so with that, Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you. Who's the other one?
All right, how's that look?
Looks good.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Again, I apologize to all of you here. I get people from all around the country, and the first thing it does is the computer goes bad. So we will hope that that doesn't happen again. Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be here visiting with you tonight. This call came out of nowhere, and it was nice. I had a nice conversation with Paul, and so I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. I've been in my past life, I've worked, I don't know how many scouts I have done interpretive programs for, from Minnesota all the way down here to Texas. And at one time in my far distant past, I was a scout. So it's nice to talk to a lot of leaders in scouting here in the United States. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And so we're going to jump right into this. So he kind of went over a little bit about the path that I traveled, so we don't have to spend any time doing that. And the one thing I would say is, and just reemphasize, is when I started down this path, I had no idea what interpretation was. I'd never heard of it. I had gone to school to be a biologist, not a educator, interpreter, and kind of fell into it with my first job. So and then found that 40 years later, here I am still doing the same kind of work. So what I want to try to do is share with you what I've learned, try to be more practical than textbook, and see where there might be opportunities where you all, the work that you all do and the folks that you work with may be able to incorporate some of the ideas regarding interpretation. But first, I work with Texas Parks and Wildlife. I work with master naturalists. I'm not technically a master naturalist, but I work as a Texas Nature Trackers biologist with a team called the Community Stewardship and Engagement Program, actually. And what we do is we lead or help advocate for volunteer-based service, and that's basically community or citizen science throughout the state of Texas. Our goal is to get as many people interested in the natural world through the use of an app called iNaturalist. Hopefully some of you have heard of that, if not all of you, to try to help us collect data on this the state of Texas flora and fauna. We have a web page where people can go and understand what we do. We have 12 projects under iNaturalist that we monitor, everything from the herps of Texas, reptiles and amphibians, all the way to rare plants, to Texas eagle nest, Texas whooper watch, those kind of things. So these are opportunities for community or citizen scientists, I'll use those terms interchangeably tonight, to help us document what we have and actually add a lot to the knowledge and understanding that we have of our state's plants and animals. And without that information, without a lot of that information, we would know far less than we do currently here in Texas. So the tool we use to engage folks is iNaturalist. It's they define it as a online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. Their two goals are to connect people to nature. Certainly your organization tries to do that. And then also to generate scientifically valuable biodiversity data. So with those people's encounters with the natural world. And what they're doing is basically taking advantage of the fact that at one point when all this stuff was new, we'd take a picture of what we were eating and share that with everybody that we knew. Here's our meal tonight, or here's our new pair of tennis shoes or whatever. They took it a big step further to say, hey, why don't you share what's out there in the real world and provide us some information about what's going on. So in Texas, we've currently, as of a couple of weeks ago, we have over 7.2 million observations from community scientists on the flora and fauna of the state of Texas. So it's a very powerful tool that we can use to gain that information. There's also another app, and this may be more applicable to y'all, especially for those of you that work with kids under the age of 13. iNaturalist created an app called Seek. It's a downloadable app onto a cell phone. It doesn't require any personal information to be given. It's one of these deals where you actually take your phone, you point it at something, it'll help identify it, and you can take a picture to save it, or at least learn what's around you out there in the natural world. So both of these are actually really powerful tools. When I worked at state parks and nature centers, I wish I had this tool. It's a great and very powerful way to learn about the world around you, whether it's the scouts you're working with or whether it's yourself. So very, very good tools to have at your disposal. So let's get right into this. So the traditional approaches to teaching children about the natural world. First of all, we get them outside so we can check that box. We fill them with facts, what I like to call data dumping, where we learn all this stuff and then we go, we're going to fill these kids with facts. And boy, we'll be able to then check the box, and we're going to be able to be proud that we shared all of our knowledge with our audience. And then there's also, of course, nature consumption versus nature appreciation. They overlap, but sometimes the consumption part of it kind of takes the day. And so we want to make sure we emphasize the nature appreciation while we're doing some of that consuming. And a good example is an ethical hunter or fisherman that is doing the things the right way. And in a lot of situations like nature centers, where I've worked before, working with teachers in schools, it's a one and done approach to nature experiences in that, okay, it's 5th grade, we're going to take them on a field trip out to nature. And then everybody can, again, check that box and go, we're really proud. We took all those kids out to 5th grade. Or a nature center says, hey, we did 20,000 school kids. And the challenge with that is, and Scouts is very different this way, and you're to be congratulated with that, is that if you don't have repeated experiences in the outdoors, you're not going to learn very much, and you're not going to be able to develop an understanding and appreciation and then be an advocate for the outdoors. And I don't know if it's a good comparison or not, but I like to compare it to any subject we teach in school. We don't do 1 day or 1 3-hour session on math and go, okay, you've learned all about math. Let's check that box and go on to another subject. Why should we do that with teaching science in the natural world? So if we revisit that approach a little bit, and several of these things you all already do. First of all, is building appreciation of and for the natural world through multiple firsthand experiences, whether it's at your camps or in the, when I was a wolf or a bear or whatever, my mom always, she was the leader, and we were always outside doing something. So that's really, really important. We can't do it through one-shot visits and expect to have any meaningful results. Using hands-on and hands-in exploration to develop critical thinking skills and just plain skills, life skills. You all do that with the badges that the kids earn and the outdoor skills that you teach them. Those are great things that need to be done actually a little bit more, I think. Not necessarily y'all, but with other agencies. And then also another big challenge is, well, ultimately what we're trying to do when it comes to interpretation is trying to create lifelong learners, advocates, and when I say advocates, I don't mean be out there tying ourselves to a tree necessarily, but people that understand that we are connected to the natural world. We are not apart from it. It's not us versus them. It's actually, we are all in this big boat called Earth together. And what we do with the natural world ultimately impacts us. I just read the head of an article today that the billions and billions of tons of plastic in the ocean that is just floating around in the ocean. It was just a frightening number. I couldn't bring myself to read the article yet. And then, of course, the other thing, and this is where you all, if for those of you that haven't or aren't familiar with interpretation, is incorporating some of the principles of interpretation. And it's taking a slightly different approach to just say we're going to go and teach them a bunch of skills, or we're going to teach them just a bunch about mammals and plants and whatever. Interpretation goes beyond that. So exactly what is interpretation? And we will define it. There are lots of definitions of interpretation we'll define in a little bit. But what I want to start with is, at its best, interpretation connects the person emotionally to what is being interpreted. It uses those emotional connections to create caring for what is being interpreted, and through caring, hopefully it creates an advocate for what is being interpreted, so that we take that we go, hey, here's something really cool, and they build an interest in it. And once they build it's just like anything that we do, okay, as adults. If we build an interest in it, then we want to learn more about it. And then as we learn more about it, we might care about it. We can do this from nature all the way to my favorite baseball team, the Chicago Cubs. I'm hopeless, but regardless, we start to care about things. And then eventually what that hopefully leads to when it comes to the natural world that we all depend upon is that we become an advocate for taking care of it. And that ultimately is the goal, is to advocate for the natural world. So interpretation invites us on a path to explore the world we know but may not know about. It helps us remove our blinders and, in a sense, discover ourselves as we discover the wonders around us. And I think at its core, that's what it's doing. It's opening up the world to us to look at things a little bit different way. And I want to start with one little piece of interpretation that I found from a gentleman who has passed, but Bob Mann was a wonderful a naturalist and interpreter up in Cook County, Illinois. And he wrote this, and I love it. I'll just read it to you. I am an old-time country lane. Now I have been officially vacated and closed. I never liked automobiles anyway. I invite you to walk as folks have walked for generations and be friendly with my trees, my flowers, and my wild creatures. To me, this is the essence of interpretation. It's a beautiful, very simple message, but it makes you look at that old road, that trail, a little bit differently. And then also, it hopefully broadens your view of that road, that it's not just a passage. A place for passage, but it's a place to enjoy, to slow down, to appreciate what's around that on your journey. And of course, interpretation is done in a lot of ways. you've all seen these things. You may not have thought of it as interpretation, but certainly there's a lots everywhere you go, it seems like. This is all nature-based, but certainly there's a lot of cultural-based history as well. But just static interpretation. These could be panels, different kinds of signs that provide you some basic information about where you are visiting. There's also static interpretation in terms of exhibits, where you go into a museum and you might see an exhibit, for example, in the lower right-hand corner on milkweeds, just milkweeds. Or you may visit a nature center and find a whole series of panels and exhibits just on invertebrates. And then, of course, another type of interpretation is those things that we go to celebrations, and there's booths and there's activities and crafts, things like that, where you have non-captive audiences. These people can come and go, and in order to capture them, you have to know what you're doing to get them interested enough to stop and take a look instead of just passing by. And then, of course, there are places like nature centers that have exhibits, freestanding exhibits. The best ones are ones that engage the audience in things to do, not just to look at. Even as adults, most of us will stop at an interpretive panel, and the majority of people will not spend more than 10 seconds there. And so that's something to keep in mind. So it's got to be engaging, it's got to be fun, it's got to be colorful, and we can apply those approaches to interpretation to some degree. And then, of course, there is the guided or formal and non-formal interpretation. That's where you all come in when you're working with kids in your camps and other locations. It's you're the leader, you're directing the activity and what's going on. And it can be, and when I say guided, formal, non-formal, and then I also say captured audience, when you have scouts at a camp, they're captured. They're there for learning and that kind of thing versus that audience that can come and go whenever they want. So why do we engage in interpretation? First of all, we want to deliver an agency's mission and enhance visitor experiences. So for example, you all have a mission as to what you're trying to do. So that mission, even though you're doing interpretation around that mission, the mission stands on its own. For example, for Texas Parks and Wildlife, our mission is to manage and conserve the natural resources of Texas and to provide hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation opportunities for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. That's our mission. So when we're doing interpretation, we're trying to enhance that. There's also to share the story of the land and its people, to draw connections between this history, both cultural and natural, and the visitor, and to help people root where they live. So it can be as simple, it can be as complicated as you want it, but it's really basically saying, you know what, this is where you live, this is where you're spending time, we want you to know about it. I remember being in school and when I was a kid, it was like, you've got to save the rainforest and the rainforest and the rainforest. And yet they never taught us what was in our own backyard, ever, 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 ever. And so I had to learn that on my own. And a lot of kids have to learn about that. So we want to make sure that the kids understand what they have around them and can appreciate that, because here's the deal. The reality is, if you start talking about the rainforest or New Zealand or something else, some big issue somewhere else, or Alaska, if they've never been there or they're never going to go there, how can they get an appreciation for that? We can talk to them until we're blue in the face, but how about we get them to appreciate the worms in the dirt when it rains, or the fish in the stream, or the crayfish, or whatever it is that's right there in the world that's very tangible and local to them. That to me is really, really important. And then finally, to welcome all visitors to those spaces where they can create their own connections in order that they may come to join others in developing care for and stewardship of those resources. So for example, when I worked at Guadalupe River State Park, which is a very top 10 visited state park in Texas, we had a wide-ranging audience. When I first got there, when I did presentations or programs at the Nature Center, most of my audience was white. But then if you went down to the river where people came on the weekends, most of the population was not white. And so I thought in my own brain, why is this happening? Why don't they come to it? Why don't other people besides the typical nature people come to our presentations? And so once I set up a canopy one time in the middle of all of these families from all over the world, and I brought out my skins and skulls, and nobody came to the table. Nobody. And so I start walking around with them. just kind of get some interest, and there was no interest. And what I didn't understand at the time is those folks that were coming to the river were coming for a completely different reason, and they were coming for family time, to be at the water's edge, and the rest of it didn't matter to them as much. And over time, I had to learn, okay, how am I going to engage them when they're not engaging with me? I've got to learn more about what's going on there. And that's what's really, really, really important. And again, it only comes through practice and observation, and then taking the skills that you know and trying to apply them the best that you can. So there's also, for a long time, there's been a debate about what's teaching and what's interpretation. And interpretation involves the sharing of information in a manner that invites audience engagement and wonder. It leads to self-discovery of personal meaning and connection to the resource being explored. The bottom line is teaching most often involves the sharing of facts for future recall. The learning and recitation of those facts is the objective. That's why we have standardized teaching or testing. We want to know, what did you learn? A lot of nature education over the years, and I've been doing this for more than 40 years now, is we try to go out and say, we're going to teach them 10 different trees and we expect them to be able to identify them at the end of the hike. Well, guess what? Most of them aren't going to be able to do it. Most adults can't do it. Why do we expect kids to do that? So that's where interpretation separates away from teaching, is that we're trying to get them to first appreciate, first become interested in it, and then let the learning proceed as it does. And everybody learns individually, as you know. So factual information, and I love factual information when it comes to plants and animals, but it's not the end game of interpretation. But for teaching, it often is. The greater goal of interpretation at the end of the day, you want to be able to answer the question, so what? Why should I care? And teaching facts is not a way to get to that end goal. So successful interpretation welcomes everyone. It presents accurate and science-based information. It stays away from the personal opinions. Keep those to yourself. It isn't afraid of complexity. It treats its audience as intelligent, including children. Most of my experience working with families has been that the kids know way more than the parents when it comes to the natural world, that it encourages dialogue, and it's also in tune with audience needs, whether it's basic comfort, where's the bathroom, or different learning styles. So some people want to hear something, some people want to see it, some people want to touch it. We have to be able to incorporate those for really successful interpretation. So some of the essential qualities of interpretation are pretty simple, actually, when you think about it. Sam Hamm, who's a world-renowned interpreter and author, came up with this thing called TORE, T-O-R-E. So first of all, a good interpretation is thematic. Any kind of teaching we do can be thematic, but certainly interpretation should be. What is it that you're trying to get across? It should be organized. It should have a beginning, an intro, a beginning, a middle, an end. So it should be organized, not just a random assortment of things. It should be relevant to what the experience are of that setting where the audience is. It also needs to be enjoyable, just plain and simple. It should be fun. If it's not fun for you, if it's not fun for the children you're working with, then why are you doing it? Okay, why are you doing it? Is it just to check a box? Or are you doing it because it should be enjoyable? And through that enjoyment, we all know this, we learn more when we're enjoying something as opposed to being forced to do something. And why can't we apply that to when we're getting kids and other people outdoors? It also should be accurate. And I say that because we live in a world of quote unquote alternate facts that has caused a lot of consternation in the program or in the country, and we need to be accurate with what we're doing when it comes to interpretation. Again, it should be engaging all of the senses in those kinds of experience where it's safe, and it should be sensory as well. So all of those are important. So now let's talk about some actual definitions. And with each of these definitions from different people or organizations, I've highlighted one word, and I'll read each of these to you as we go through them, but I want you to note the word in yellow, and we'll talk about that on the other side. So interpretation, based on the National Association for Interpretation, we're going to talk a little bit more about them at the end of the presentation, is a mission-based communication process that forges emotional and intellectual connections between the interests of the audience and the meanings inherent in the resource. That's what NAI says. Beck and Cable, who wrote this book, The Gifts of Interpretation, a fantastic, easily read book. I would encourage you, if you're interested in this, to please. Hey, we've got somebody talking in the background. I don't know who that is, Paul, but oh, Mary Price. Mary Price's speaker is on. I don't know if that can be. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Beck and Cable wrote this book. I would encourage you, if you're interested in interpretation and becoming a better instructor, a better teacher, a better leader, get this book. It's really, really good. But they defined it as an informational and inspirational process designed to enhance understanding, appreciation, and protection of our cultural and natural legacy. And then there is David Larson. David Larson used to be the training manager for the National Park Service. Unfortunately, he passed away of cancer several years ago. If you ever can see any of his YouTube videos on interpretation, they're some of the best I've ever seen. But he defined it, he just broke it down and made it pretty simple. How to connect hearts and minds to places, objects, and other resources. And the words that I highlighted are all emotional words, hearts, emotional, those kinds of things. I think interpretation, when it's really good, comes from your heart. It comes from your soul. It's not about how much information can I share with these people, how, it's really about connecting emotionally, connecting one-on-one, connecting one to your group. I think that becomes the most powerful type of interpretation and teaching. And the reason I say that is because if you are into it, if you really are passionate about what you're teaching, the audience, I don't care who the audience is, if you're passionate about it and you show real love and a real interest in what you're doing, those people are going to come along for the ride. If you're just reciting the instructions or the notes from a program that was written that you didn't even have anything to do with, then it lacks that love and passion. It just does. And when it comes to children, they know. Children know when you are, and I hate to use the word faking, but when you're going through the motions or you're faking it, they know and they respond accordingly. So you've got to keep that in the back of your mind. And then there's this guy by the name of Freeman Tilden. He is the godfather of interpretation. He was not an interpreter, actually. He was a social scientist. But he used to visit a lot of the national parks a long, long time ago. And so he wrote a book, a small book, that is now the Bible of interpretation, if you will, still is. And he had 6 principles, and I'm going to share each one of those briefly with you. But he defined interpretation as an educational activity which aims to reveal meanings and relationships to the use of original objects by firsthand experience and by illustrative media, rather than to simply communicate factual information. And the thing that I really want to highlight here is it's not just about factual information. You can build with it, but it shouldn't be the ultimate outcome of your presentation. I don't care what that presentation is when it comes to outdoor education. So his 6 principles, I'm going to highlight a word on each one of these, but as you read through these, you'll probably be able to figure out the word that I'm going to highlight. His principle number 1 is any interpretation that does not somehow relate to what is being displayed or described to something within the personality or experience of the visitor will be sterile. So if they have no interest in it, they're not going to care about it. And one of the most powerful tools I ever did in interpretation, I am a licensed bird bander. And when I put a live bird in my hand and put it in front of a group of people, it didn't matter if it was kids or adults. A lot of times it was kids. They became very interested in that sort of thing very quickly. So it's kind of cheating a little bit, but it's a way to capture their interest. And you can do that. You don't have to have a bird in your hand to be able to do that sort of thing. And again, your enthusiasm, your being able to relate that object or that thing to the personal experience of that person is really important. So the keyword there is relate. You need to build a relationship between what you're talking about and your audience. So principle 2, information as such is not interpretation. Interpretation is revelation based upon information. And of course, the key word there is revelation. We're trying to reveal meanings that go beyond the facts. And I know I'm beating this to death, but I see so much called interpretation that is just recitation of facts, or somebody that has a whole bunch of knowledge and is going to do that data dump. We've got to get, as adults, we've got to get away from that. It may make us feel good, but it's not really making, is it really making a difference in the lives of those children? Because here's the thing, there's always books. And of course, now there's the internet. So there's other ways to learn the facts. You got to get them interested in wanting to learn about the facts first. And so I want to share this poem with you because I think this is a classic example of this. So it's written by Walt Whitman. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick. Till rising and gliding, I wandered off by myself into the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. And so what to me, and this may mean something different to you, to me, basically it's like, well, that is all the facts, it's great, blah, blah, blah. But how about if we just go out and enjoy it? Take the time to slow down and just enjoy what's out there. And that's what you all can do. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be filling heads every second with a bunch of information. Principle 3, interpretation is an art, which combines many arts, whether the materials presented are scientific, historical, or architectural. Any art is to some degree teachable. And Enos Mills, who I'll mention in a few minutes, a little bit more, he wrote a great book on interpretation way back before all of this before there really was interpretation. It was actually had a definition. And he wrote The Nature Guide as an artist, and I really believe that. And so the key word here is art. But art, it's how creative can you be? How creative can you be without being hokey, right? This photograph of my friend Naita looks hokey. I'm actually behind that black screen doing puppets. So there's lots of ways to get messages across. And a lot of that results from artistic thought and creativity. So principle 4, the chief aim of interpretation is not instruction, but provocation. So through interpretation, understanding, through understanding, appreciation, through appreciation, protection. That's what we're doing. And that's what Scouts are trying to do, I think, in part, is to create a lot of people that are going to grow up and be responsible conservationists, responsible people about the world around them. And isn't that what we want? So that's where interpretation can be extremely, extremely powerful. So principle 5, interpretation should aim to present a whole rather than a part, and must address itself to the whole man rather than any phase. This is a picture of a place called Old Tunnel State Park. It's a 10-acre park, but this is an old railroad track, or old railroad tunnel that was cut through limestone out here in the hill country of Texas. And it has all kinds of stories. It's got cultural history about the train, how they made the tunnel. And then it turns out when we start trying to figure out how we're going to tell this whole story, the trains that ran through there, all of the history behind that, it also is the home to 2 million Mexican free-tail bats. So there's all kinds of things to weave in there. And so we can weave a story, but then we also have to look at the person and go, oh my gosh, they're bats. Well, bats have rabies. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What if I fall off the thing? Can I crawl into the tunnel where there's guano piled all over the place? There's so many different things that are part of this story. And it's how do we take all of those things and weave together an informational, yes, but educational and inspiring story that make people want to visit this place and also want to protect it for the bats for future generations. And then principle 6, interpretation addressed to children should not be a dilution of the presentation to adults, but should follow a fundamentally different approach. And Rachel Carson, hopefully you all know who Rachel Carson is. you don't, you should look her up, learn something about her and what she did for the world. But she wrote, if I had the influence with the good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that her gift to each child in the world be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life. And that's, I think, one of our biggest challenges is that we as adults have been beaten down by everything that goes on around us, being responsible parents and providers, and having to have a job and make money and pay the bills and all of that stuff. We sometimes start to lose that sense of wonder. And what I hope is that we as educators, we as interpreters, whatever you want to call yourself, that we try to rediscover it for ourselves, because if we can rediscover it for ourselves, if we have lost it, then we can make sure that the audiences, the kids that we work with, hopefully maintain or grow their sense of wonder so they don't lose it. And of course, the whole idea here is a different approach. Children, you can't take an adult program and turn it into a kid program just by changing a few words. That just doesn't work. Their learning styles are different. You know all this. Learning styles are different. They see the world from a different perspective. They literally see the world from a different level. What they see down here is different than what we see up here. So you got to keep that in mind. I mentioned Enos Mills. He wrote this book, The Adventures of a Nature Guide. He wrote, the interpreter arouses interest by dealing in big principles, not with detached and colorless information. He creates more permanent interest in the biography of a single tree than in the naming of many trees. Again, this goes right back to what I've been saying all evening. The best interpretation comes from the heart and is laced with imagination, creativity, inspiration, revelation, and personal commitment. And of all the people in the world that I would never think I would put a quote in on a presentation of interpretation is Winston Churchill, but here it is. Before you can inspire with emotion, you must be swamped with it yourself. Before you can move their tears, your own must flow. To convince them, you must yourself believe. And that's where your passion and your love of what you're doing comes to bear. And then once that is expressed, again, they will follow. So what makes an interpreter? You should be organized, ready to present, have a strong sense of wonder, be genuine, have a passion for and knowledge of the resource, be a weaver of stories, an artist. The best interpretation, I think, is storytelling. And you can use your personal experience in the outdoors to relate to them, to let them share those stories too. And it becomes a conversation. Being a lifelong learner, very, very important. A lot of people fail at that. They get to a certain point and that's good. And that's all they want to do. When we're dealing with kids and teaching and interpreting, we can't be that way. And in a word, we have to be caring. We have to care about the resource and the people that we are interacting with in that resource. So for your audience, what makes an interpreter? Being on time, being welcoming, addressing the basic comfort of the audience, understanding interests of the audience, being adaptable, using teachable moments. One of the most frustrating things I see when I watch a nature guide is they're doing a program on tree identification, and I don't know, an armadillo walks across the trail and some kid goes, hey, there's an armadillo. And I've seen interpreters do this where they go, hey, we're talking about trees right now. Okay. Teachable moments, use them. Being open to changing your programs when things aren't going the way you need or wanted or expected to. That I've had that happen. You have to be willing to accept that. And then also just having a passion for people of all backgrounds and experiences, and an openness to learning about them and their experiences. This is not all about you. And I think that's something we sometimes as adults forget about. And then also making sure that you're thankful to your audience, that you engage them, and then also be accepting to getting thanks. So let's be practical here. You don't have to know everything, and you won't, and you don't. So it's okay to say, I don't know, but I challenge anybody that has to do that, and I've had to do that, is go learn what that answer is. So the next time you're armed with more information, you can build more of it into your interpretation, and that's a good thing. And make sure that you're also continuing to learn. This whole thing about, okay, I've read this book, I know everything, I think I know everything. Boy, we don't. Every day there are changes to the information because there's more science and there's more research out there. So what we might have taught 20 years ago may not be the same thing today. I find that after a 40-year career, I feel like sometimes I learn new information and go, my gosh, I need to go find those audiences from 25 years ago and correct my information. It's kind of stupid, but at the same time, I care about that stuff. So I want to make sure it's good. And again, expect the unexpected. By the fact that you are interested and sharing this interest puts you ahead of your audience. Don't freak out. You're always going to have somebody that knows more than you do. That's okay. Allow them into the conversation. Let them share. A lot of times that's what they want to do anyway. And they can add to the story. Make sure if you're out looking for birds, one of the most frustrating nature walks is bird watching, because even if kids have binoculars, you see a bird that's 5 inches big and you see it, and then you go, there it is. And then it moves behind a leaf and nobody can see it. So take a longer field guide, take the resources you need to be able to still have a meaningful experience. The other thing is walk the path before you walk the path. Okay, know a little bit about what's out there. The other thing I would encourage you is turn around and go the other way. You'll find different things. And then be genuinely amazed. Again, if you're not interested, if you're not truly passionate about it, your audience isn't going to be either. So when all else fails, remember these basics. Every age matters. Doesn't matter if it's preschool all the way up to college or even beyond. Engage with them. Don't just say, go do that, and then stand back and talk about the Dallas Cowboys game and how they got beat again and blah, blah, blah with the other adults. Engage with them. Be in the moment. Explore with them. That's part of being in the moment. Get on their level. Sometimes you literally got to get down eye to eye to make your point and to engage with them and find out what they want to share with you. Doing matters. Hands-on, hands-in. It's not about how many trees they learn or how many bugs they catch. A lot of it is the experience of doing, okay, and experiencing it in that way. They're going to remember more that way than if you show them an aquarium full of aquatic insects floating in a jar and they never get to touch them, they never get to collect them themselves. That is not a very meaningful experience. Talk with them and not at them. I love this picture because my bird banding friend here was talking to these kids about this goldfinch. And if you look at their eyes, they were part of the conversation. They were not being lectured at. They were actually talking to him. He was talking to them. It was a conversation. And that, I think, is some of the most effective ways to be a good interpreter. And then provide tools for self-discovery, whether that's magnifying glasses, insect nets, real skulls, those kinds of things. Don't talk about them, have them, and then use them. And then also let them figure some things out. You don't have to tell them everything. Let them just have some self-discovery. That can be very, very valuable. And also when their parents are there, engage them too, okay? I think sometimes we make the mistakes that the parents are in the background and they're talking about whatever, and you're having the kids do things. Have the parents engage with them. The kids will appreciate that. Trust me, they will appreciate that. The parents will appreciate that, and there will be more learning that can happen after the fact as well. And then also just rediscover your sense of wonder. Okay, have fun with what you're doing. And then there is the gift of passion, and Beck and Cable wrote about this, and I think this is so, so important. Passion is the essential ingredient for powerful and effective interpretation. Passion for the resource, for those people who come to be inspired by the same. If you don't have that in you, just go out and find it. Find it somewhere. I know you have passions in there. Go discover that. And then finally, in terms of those 6 principles we talked about earlier, at the end of his book, he wrote about the priceless ingredient. And when I went through interpretive training, nobody ever talked about the last chapter in Freeman Tilden's book. But he wrote, if you love the thing you interpret, and love the people who come to enjoy it, you need commit nothing to memory. For if you love the thing, you have not only taken the pains to understand it to the limit of your capacity, but you also feel its special beauty in the general richness of life's beauty. The 6 principles with which he began this book may after all be a single principle. If this should be so, I feel certain that the single principle must be love. And when it comes to teaching about nature and science, a lot of people want to take that word out of all of it. The fact of the matter is, it's the most important word in it, okay, of what we do. If we love it, it comes through. Our passion and all of the rest make for good interpretation. So does it matter? I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm not going to say anything. I just want you to look at the children's faces, and then you determine whether you think it matters. And then I want to share you the fact that it matters, the proof that it matters. And a lot of times when you guys are teaching or working with scouts, you don't know where they're going to be 40 years from now or what they're going to be doing. This young lady came to a bird banding class when she was 10 years old, 12 years old. Anna Keenan. In fact, I just had a conversation with her and gave her a job reference within the last month. She's now a mother and a very successful professional in the outdoor, the natural world resources. Anna is just amazing. She became an interpreter through experience. She's an amazing artist as well, so a very creative person. She became a research biologist, and now she works as a forester in the state of Nebraska. Wonderful, wonderful person. And again, you just never know what's going to happen with the people that you engage with. Kendallyn Voles is somebody that came to me as a very shy high school girl, was interested in birds and nature. She eventually worked her way through and got her degree through through Oregon State University. She got intern experiences working with, and I'm very jealous, black oyster catchers. She's now in graduate school pursuing research on diseases of snakes that are related to the diseases that bats are currently struggling with. And then I received a letter years ago. So back in 2000, this is part of it. Back in 2006 or thereabouts, we attended a bird banding event run by you at the Martha Lafitte Thompson Nature Sanctuary in Liberty, Missouri. My daughter was only 6 or 7 years old at the time. You allowed her to release a goldfinch after it had been banded. I thought I would give you an update on what has happened since that day. So towards the end, she said, when we traced back our daughter's interest in birds, more like an obsession now, we're pretty sure it began with that first bird banding event with you. Birds have been her passion ever since. She's now a graduate student, I think in Mississippi. She's gone to taught about birds. She's gone to camp. She's talked to Audubon societies. I used to use that picture on the left in some of my presentations about interpretation, not knowing who that girl was. This was years and years ago. And to find out that just that one, it wasn't me, it was that little bird, had given her a gift that would continue now throughout her life, is a pretty amazing thing and a pretty powerful thing, something very powerful that we have in our hands. So yes, I know it matters. This means that what you're doing when you're working with scouts matters each and every time. You're an influencer. Everybody likes the word influencer these days. You are an influencer for the environment, a changer of lives, and a conduit between the natural world and society. This is a powerful space that you and I occupy, share your passion, and wield it with care and compassion. You never know when your passion for and commitment to the natural world will indeed make a difference in the life of another person. But I invite each of you, I implore each of you to take that chance and continue to do what you're doing and find additional different ways to become even better at what you're already doing, because it will, in fact, make a difference. So some of the challenges, of course, we face is that we must remember that people enjoy the outdoors differently. We have to understand where they come from and how they view the natural world is going to be different from us. Very, very important. And we also have to realize that not all kids spend all the time outside. We have to make sure that we take that into consideration. Whoops, let me go back one. And then we have to get away from these one and done field experiences. They need multiple grade level experiences. It needs to be repeated, just like you all do. When a boy or a girl enters Scouts, they're going to have so many opportunities. And wouldn't that be nice if that happened in our schools, at nature centers, places like that? So congratulations to the work that you already do and continue to do. So basically, I will just end with, lend your hand, create a spark, get in there and care, because it's like the Lorax says, unless somebody like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And it's so, so true. And here's more resources. You're going to have a copy of all of this. Really, really good information. I did want to mention the National Association for Interpretation has training opportunities to become certified interpretive guides or hosts or trainers, planners. That's something that you might want to consider for some of your frontline educators. It would be a great experience for them to gain, and those workshops are held around the country through this organization. So, some questions for consideration. When working with Scouts, could you see the value of utilizing principles of interpretation, or are you satisfied with just teaching? And these are rhetorical, but also for discussion. Scouting attempts to teach life skills. Does it include appreciation and respect for the natural world? And I'm not talking about just using the natural world, but true appreciation for the natural world. Does your work with Scouts lead to advocates for the natural world, or simply consumers of its resources and earners of merit badges? And these are questions you might be revolting at right now, but I think as we are responsibility we take as educators, we need to continuously ask ourselves these questions. And is there value in training Scout leaders on the principles of interpretation, or having staff certified in interpretation? Again, something for you to discuss. And the reason I've been doing this for more than 40 years, I've given my life to this. I've talked to more than 1 million people from Minnesota to Texas, and I continue to do so. And a large part is because I've got grandchildren and a daughter and a son, and I want the world to be a better place for them. I don't want to see it disappear. I don't want to see it destroyed. And that is my commitment. And that is why I've done this and spent my entire life doing it. Some days I wonder if I make a difference, but doggone it, I'm going to continue to try. And I apologize for getting emotional, but this stuff, it matters. And you just need to know that what you're doing is critically important to society and to the world that we live in. So remember, you can't have the fruits without the roots. There's my email if you care to reach out to me and ask more questions or request any information. I'm very happy to discuss that with you in a phone call or through email, whatever it is. And I want to thank you for the time tonight. And I apologize for the snafu with my computer.
Greg, thank you so much. That was a outstanding presentation. I'm sitting here thinking I've got a trainer course I'm teaching in a couple of weekends here, and I've already got some ideas of some content that I'm going to be adding into that course as a result of this. So I do think you're making a difference, and I hope some other people felt the same way after hearing you speak.
Well, I thank all of you for the work you're doing too, because it's really critically important, more so probably than ever.
Thank you. If you can hang around for a few minutes, we're about to wrap up, and at the end, then maybe people might have some questions they'd like to ask. So,
happy to.
Okay, it's time for now. I'd like to close off with my my roundtable minute. I'd like to close with just another quote from Aldo Leopold, and I thought this one fit really well with what Craig was talking about. At the end of each poem sits the author, if we can find him. What we actually find is beyond predicting. A rabbit suddenly yearning to be elsewhere, a woodcock fluttering his disclaimer, a cock pheasant indignant over wetting his feathers in the grass. So think about that and what Craig just said. And next time you're outside, go out and find something to observe and look at it like a scientist. Describe it. You know, it's 5 inches long. It weighs, 2 ounces. It's brown. It's lives in the trees, okay, or whatever. And then go and look at it and pretend you're a writer and describe it with adjectives, describe the attributes about it, and think about how you use those two and how do you connect. How do the adjectives help you connect with the natural object, and how does the science fit into that? It's a great way to get you thinking and not just look at stuff as a science, as a fact, as another fact out of a book. Anyway, that's my challenge to all of you as we end tonight. And with that, I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Next month, we're gonna talk about Project Learning Tree for next month's roundtable. So I hope to see everybody for that. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for your patience with our technical challenges for the evening, but I think it was well worth it. Thanks so much.